Hello children and welcome to the session today. We all have learned about plants, we have learned about human beings, we have learned about animals, we have also learned about very tiny animals. But do we know that there are organisms so tiny that they are not visible to the naked eye? Such organisms are called microorganisms. The discovery of microorganisms was possible only with the invention of microscope. A microscope helps us to view very tiny things in a very larger size. The first microscope, that was a very powerful microscope, was only developed in 1672 by Anton von Leeuwenhoek. He observed the cells of the blood, bacteria, and other tiny organisms. In 1965, the first laboratory microscope was developed by Robert Hooke. Let us now understand the characteristics of these microorganisms. Microorganisms are living beings. So what are the characteristics of living beings? Living beings grow, living beings eat food, living beings reproduce, living beings breathe in air, living beings grow old and die. All these characteristics are shown by microorganisms. Now the interesting question is, where do the microorganisms live? What is the habitat of microorganisms? It is very interesting to note that microorganisms are found in all kinds of habitats. They are found everywhere from the desert region to the cold polar region. They survive everywhere. They survive on human skin. They survive inside human beings and animals. They also survive on the dead organic material that is lying here, there, and everywhere. Next, let us understand about the size of microorganisms. Microorganisms are very tiny. They are single-celled organisms. They cannot be seen with a naked eye. Microorganisms can only be seen by a very, very powerful microscope that is known as electron microscope. Now, it is very interesting to know that microorganisms survive in the harshest of winters and the harshest of summers. Why do you think it is so? It is so because of their adaptive features. Microorganisms can survive any climate, any temperature, even boiling water. This is because they form a very, very strong outer covering around their body, which is known as the cyst. Now, microorganisms can be harmful. Microorganisms can also be beneficial. If you remember studying how curd is said, you must remember the name of the bacillus or the bacteria that helps in setting off curd. That is a beneficial microorganism. Whenever you have throat infection or fever, what does the doctor tell you? The doctor tells you that it is a viral infection. That viral infection or virus is a microorganism and comes under the category of harmful microorganisms. Let us now understand the different types of microorganisms and let us understand about them one by one. The first important category of microorganisms are bacteria. Singular is known as bacterium. The second is fungi. Singular, fungus. Algae, singular, alga. Protozoa, singular is protozoan. And the last but not the least, viruses, the singular is virus. Let us now understand these microorganisms one by one. The first one being bacteria. Bacteria, as you can see, are the simplest unicellular microorganisms that have been the first living things on earth. The first living bacteria on earth was known as cyanobacterium. The size of the bacteria generally consists of one cell, and the bacteria or all the other microorganisms are measured in the unit of microns. So, as we can see, they vary in size from 0.2 to 100 microns. Let us now understand the various shapes of microorganisms. Microorganisms come in various shapes. They can be rod-shaped, they can be bell-shaped, they can also be round, and they can also be spherical. Let us understand the basic structure of bacteria. Bacteria are unicellular microorganisms. This means they have only a single cell. Bacteria have a primitive cell structure. Primitive cell structure means that they have not evolved over the years. The next point is that they have a well-organized nucleus. but it is important for us to understand that the cell organelles are not bound in a membrane. There is a cell wall that is present. We also need to understand the bacterial cell existing in plants are different from the bacterial cells that are present in animals. Habitat, as we can see, bacteria are found in air, soil, in deepest seas, hot springs, and even in polar ice caps. Bacteria also live in the mouths of animals, including human beings. Like all living organisms, bacteria also need food, moisture, and warmth to grow. Next, we come to types of bacteria. On the basis of shape, bacteria can be classified into Bacillus, Coccus, and Spirillum. On the basis of their reaction to a particular stain, which is called Gram stain, bacteria can be Gram positive or Gram negative. This strain was developed by a Danish scientist by the name Christian Gram. Let us now understand about nutrition in bacteria. The first bacteria that was found on Earth, cyanobacteria, were photosynthetic. In addition to chlorophyll pigment required for photosynthesis, they also contained a pigment known as phycocyanin, which is a blue pigment. This is the reason these bacteria get their color, which is blue-green. Many bacteria are heterotrophic. They derive their nutrition from different organisms. Now, this mode of nutrition can either be saprophytic or it can be parasitic. Recalling the saprophytic mode of nutrition, in saprophytic mode of nutrition, the organism depends on dead decaying matter for its nutrition. Parasitic mode of nutrition is when the parasite or the organism depends entirely on the host organism to derive its food. Like all living things, bacteria also need oxygen to burn up the food. But some bacteria need oxygen, others do not need oxygen. The bacteria that need oxygen for burning up their food are known as aerobes. And the bacteria that do not need oxygen for their growth are known as anaerobes, meaning without air. Reproduction in bacteria is a very simple step. The single cell bacteria simply divides and reproduces into two daughter cells. Now, the time taken by bacteria to reproduce into two daughter cells may be 10 minutes or 20 minutes. But it is very interesting to note that within 24 hours, a bacteria needs air, warmth, and moisture in order to reproduce. But just in case the conditions are not favorable, bacteria develop spores. These spores are very hard and very resistant. They can survive over months looking for favorable conditions to reproduce. Let us now understand about useful bacteria and harmful bacteria. As we can see here, there are certain antibiotics or the medicines that we take in case of severe infection that contain useful bacteria in them. Bacteria are also very important for food industry. Milk products like curd and cheese need bacteria to act upon them. Bacteria is also required in ripening of the tea leaves and to give that magical aroma to it. Bacteria are also required to ferment the fruit juices to form wines and vinegar. Bacteria also have a tenderizing effect on meat. Bacteria are cleansing agents of the environment. We just learned that bacteria have a saprophytic mode of nutrition as well. So they feed on the dead and decaying organisms and clear the environment of them. The next important role is recycling nutrients. When the bacteria feed on decomposing material, then obviously they break the nutrients which is absorbed by the soil and is returned to the environment. Bacteria have a very important role in nitrogen fixation. We have learned about rhizobium bacteria and how they convert atmospheric nitrogen into a usable form that is readily absorbed by the plants through the soil. Bacteria are also important in digestion of food. We have learned in the previous chapter how in the stomach of herbivores, bacteria and protozoa act to convert cellulose into easily digestible material. Bacteria can also be harmful. Bacteria causes food poisoning. There are certain bacterial infections on the skin, and also there are infections which are communicable like tuberculosis, diphtheria, tetanus and pneumonia. Bacteria also leads to food spoilage. We have learned that bacteria needs moisture, air and warmth to grow. So once the food are left in the open, specifically in rainy season, we see bacterial growth in them. This bacterial growth leads to spoilage of food and it gives out a very distinctive and very repulsive odor. Food preservation is a special technique in which foods are treated either with excess sugar, as in case of jams and jellies, or excess salt, as in case of pickles. These to avoid the growth of microorganisms in food. Pasteurization was a very interesting technique developed by Louis Pasteur, and in this technique, he used to boil milk at a certain high temperature for a certain time. This ensured the killing of 99.5% of harmful organisms, and pasteurized milk could be stored conveniently for over 5 to 6 days in the refrigerator. Pasteurization has also been used lately for fruit juices, wine and dairy products. Let us now understand about unicellular algae and multicellular algae. Unicellular algae are made up of a single cell. They have a definite nucleus. Unicellular algae may be able to move with the help of flagella, or they may not be able to move at all. Some unicellular algae, known as phytoplanktons, are capable of photosynthesis. Coming next to multicellular algae. Multicellular algae are majorly seen as seaweeds. The uses of algae. Some seaweeds are used as food in countries especially like China and Japan. A substance by the name of agar extracted from red algae is used in thickening of foods like jellies, jams, etc. In industries, this agar is also used to grow other microorganisms. Kelp is a very rich source of iodine. The next important use of microorganisms, algae, is oxygen. Some algae are capable of photosynthesis, because of which they add oxygen to the atmosphere. It is also believed that the first oxygen in the atmosphere was released by the algae. Blue-green algae are also capable of nitrogen fixation. Now let us understand why algae are harmful. Algae, as we have seen, are capable of photosynthesis and they grow on the top layer of water bodies. Because of this, the entire water body becomes unfit for drinking, swimming and other activities. Also, the organisms under the surface of water are not able to breathe, get enough sunlight or get food for themselves. This is the reason the entire water body is actually infested by algae. Let us now move on to the next microorganism, which is known as fungi. Fungi are plant-like organisms, but they lack chlorophyll. That means they are incapable of photosynthesis and they are heterotrophic in nature. They obtain their food either through saprophytic mode or through parasitic mode. Fungi are capable of growing in the dark. Now let us understand the different kinds of fungi. There are 4 different kinds of fungi: yeasts, mildews, molds and mushrooms. Yeasts and mildews are unicellular, molds are multicellular, and mushrooms are the largest fungi on earth. Yeasts are grown in colonies, mildews are parasitic in nature, molds can be seen growing on old bread, pickles, etc., as is also clear from this picture, and mushrooms grow on dead decaying matter. Now, how do fungi reproduce? Yeast reproduces by budding and the other fungi reproduce by producing spores. These spores are very, very strong. They will grow only when the conditions are favorable. And what are the favorable conditions that we have been talking about? Air, warmth and moisture. Now, let us understand the useful fungi and the harmful fungi. Yeast for years has been used in making bread. Cheese is also made using a form of fungi. Fungi penicillium is a very broad spectrum drug and it is used in curing many diseases. Harmful fungi. Many fungi are responsible for causing skin and lung infection both in human beings as well as animals. Fungi is heavily responsible for food spoilage and in some cases it also releases poisonous substances that can lead to illness and sometimes even death. The next microorganism that we have to study is called protozoa. Protozoa are also unicellular microorganisms, but they are larger than bacteria. They are found in all the places, right from stagnant water even to feces. They are heterotrophic in nature and the mode of nutrition is saprophytic, parasitic and even carnivorous. Why carnivorous? Because they are capable of eating other protozoa as well as bacteria. Protozoa at least need some moisture to survive in. They become very inactive in dry conditions and when temperatures go above 80 degrees, protozoans die. Amoeba is the simplest protozoan. As you can see in the picture, amoeba has false foot by the name of pseudopodia. Whenever amoeba locates a food particle around in its environment, the pseudopodia engulf the food particle. The body of the amoeba releases some digestive juices which completely dissolve them. Paramecium is another type of protozoan that is slipper shape. A paramecium has got hair-like structure called cilia all around its body. These help it not only in movement but also in catching food particles from around its environment. Protozoans produce asexually by binary fission. Let us understand about some diseases that are caused by protozoans. The first is amoebic dysentery that is caused by Entamoeba histolytica. These amoeba attack the red blood cells and feed on them. The symptoms of this disease are stool and loose motions that are full of blood. The next important disease that we all know of is malaria. Malaria is actually caused by the bite of a female Anopheles mosquito. What actually happens is, while biting, the female Anopheles mosquito transfers the protozoan into the human or the animal body. We all know the symptoms of malaria. They are fever, chills, muscle ache and headache. They also include vomiting, coughing and yellowing of the skin. We all have understood prevention of malaria ample number of times. I am repeating them once again. Malaria can be prevented by simply preventing stagnation of water in water coolers, in pots, in gardens, on roadsides. This prevents multiplication of malarial mosquito and hence the spread of malaria. There are some useful protozoa as well. Protozoa form an important link in aquatic food chain. Protozoa decompose organic matter. Protozoa also exist in symbiotic association with other animals. Now let us understand the last but not the least microorganism, viruses. Unlike all the other organisms, viruses are always pathogenic. That means they always cause disease whether in plants, animals or human beings. Viruses can live in all conditions. Viruses are active when they enter a living body and they are totally inactive when they are outside a living body. Some viruses can even exist inside the bacterial cells. These viruses are then called bacteriophages. All the diseases that we have learned about till now are caused by different microorganisms. Let us take a look at these diseases and understand which disease is caused by which microorganism. Tuberculosis is caused by bacteria. Measles is caused by virus. Chickenpox again is caused by virus. Polio is caused by virus. Cholera is caused by bacteria. Typhoid again is caused by bacteria. Hepatitis B is caused by virus. Malaria is caused by a protozoa and rabies is caused by virus. In this chapter, we have learned many things. We have learned about microorganisms which are invisible to the human eye. We have understood their harmful effects and their useful effects. We have also understood how we can protect ourselves from these microorganisms. Thank you.